Sedat Dağlıoğlu. I'm the director of Northern Ohio Intercultural Association, short in NOICA, and I will try to be your moderator this evening. I hope you enjoyed your dinner and your baklava. Thank you so much. And it's my pleasure, after Tom, to welcome you to the next part of our program, speech/panel discussion, reflecting on our theme, which is the lasting impact of Nostra Aetate on interfaith dialogue and peace building. One may ask, what is Nostra Aetate? And then I will be explaining that to you, but we will be hearing from our speakers that the importance of interfaith dialogue and the effect of Nostra Aetate. But let me first give you a brief information about Nostra Aetate, which is in Latin. Please forgive me for those who speak Latin. It means that in our time, Nostra Aetate, in our time, is a declaration issued by the Second Vatican Council of the Catholic Church on October 28, 1965. So this year is the 60th year of declaration of Nostra Aetate. It's an official church document that focuses on the church's relationship with non-Christian religions, especially Judaism and Islam. It invited the world's religious communities into a new era, one that recognizes spiritual truth and dignity in other faiths. It condemned anti-Semitism, encouraged mutual understanding, and opened doors for dialogue with Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, and all others. Importantly, it affirmed that while we may differ in doctrine, we are united in our shared humanity and divine origin. What made Nostra Aetate so revolutionary was its shift away from centuries of suspicion toward a language of respect, common ground, and shared values. It clearly stated that the Church rejects nothing that is true and holy in other religions. And it urged all people to overcome conflict through dialogue and collaboration with followers of other religions. This document has since inspired countless interfaith initiatives around the world, including evenings like this one. Tonight, we are honored to hear from three respected voices who embody the spirit of interfaith understanding. Before I carry on, please allow me to make just a quick reminder for our audience. Please use those pen and paper on your tables. If you have any questions or any comment, we will be collecting those from you by the end of the speeches. We, by the way, also wanted to just let me tell you in brackets that here from Catholic Church, but unfortunately, because of the tight schedule of our possible speakers, that we don't have anyone from the Catholic Church, but I'm sure that our speakers will make it up. I will now introduce our speakers one by one. And once again, I would like to express our appreciation to our panelists for making time and being here and adding value to our program with their contributions. I forgot to mention that some may think that what NOICA stands for, please go to noica.org. In fact, I had some paper, and then it's kind of lost now. Before I introduce our panelists, let me tell you, we had a scholar with a sense of humor who lived in the Turkish tradition and history, who lived in the 13th century. His name is Nostra. Once that he called everyone and then told them, I will tell you something that you will never heard this before, and then you must be at this time on this place, so I will let you know. He did write everything that he will explain to people, and then he went up to stage. He just looked for the papers, and then he told them that nobody knows this, that the information that I'll give you. He checked his pockets, and then his paper is not there, and he told the audience, before I came here to talk to you, this knowledge has been only known by me and God. And now it's only known by God. So it's not that way, so you can still go to look at our work and then make it up, and then see what NOICA stands for. So please join me in welcoming our distinguished speakers, and I would like to start from Dr. Bickart. Dr. Bickart holds a BA in English Literature from the University of Chicago. He studied Talmud at the Pardis Institute of Jewish Studies in Jerusalem. He later enrolled at the Harvard Divinity School, earning an MA in Hebrew Bible in 2003. After being ordained as a conservative rabbi in 2008, he remained at Jewish Theology School for doctoral work and received his PhD in 2015. He later became postdoctoral fellow in the program of Judaic Studies at Yale University. In 2018, he joined the Faculty of Theology and Religious Studies department at John Carroll University. Dr. Bickart was appointed in 2022 as the inaugural holder of Jack, Joseph, and Morton Mandel Chair in Jewish Studies. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Mandel. Our second speaker, that maybe most of you already know him, that he's our host tonight, that Reverend Dr. Tom MacMillan. And then he did undergraduate work at DePauw University, received his master's from Princeton Theological Seminary and his Doctor of Ministry from McCormick Theological Seminary. He has served with the wonderful people of John Knox Presbyterian Church since 2001. He has been married almost 34 years to Jessie, and they are raised and being inspired by their 4 boys. He is being an inspiration to so many in the community and beyond. Dr. And finally, we have Dr. Zeki Saritoprak. He completed his PhD at Marmara University in Turkey. Dr. Saritoprak has been teaching Islamic studies courses in the Theology and Religious Studies department at John Carroll University since 2002. Since then, he has become the inaugural holder of the Bediüzzaman Said Nursi Chair in Islamic Studies. He is a member of the National Catholic Muslim Dialogue and currently a Muslim co-chair from the Midwest Catholic Muslim Dialogue. In his many writings, including his books on Islam's Jesus and Islamic spirituality, and his countless public appearances, Dr. Saritoprak has become a tireless advocate for dialogue, reconciliation, and peace between the followers of the world's religious traditions. And then he's currently appointed as the chair of the faculty. So please welcome. Then I'll give floor to our speakers. At panel discussion, I would like to invite, and then just let you know that each speaker will have overall, in the worst case scenario, 15 minutes. When you have and reach to 10 minutes, I will be not poking you, but I'll be here to remind you that it's 10 minutes. So you have 5 more minutes to wrap it up. So thank you so much. And then right now that we would like to hear from our speakers the importance of interfaith dialogue and the lasting impact of Nostra Aetate on interfaith dialogue and peace building. So let us start with Dr. Bickart.
Thanks so much, everyone. It's really wonderful to be here. In the rabbinic tradition, there is a principle called hakarat hatov. I guess best translating as recognizing the good. So whereas I'm going to have some critiques of Nostra Aetate and some maybe challenges to the Catholic Church in particular and to Christianities more broadly, in the second I want to just begin with with hakarat hatov, with some recognition of some of the amazing positives that have come out of the Second Vatican Council in general and really out of this document, Nostra Aetate, we're talking about together. The very fact that I, a rabbinic Jew, and my colleague, Dr. Saritoprak, a religious Muslim, are faculty members in the Catholic Department of Theology is maybe the most obvious recognition of such a thing. And I will say yesterday we have another colleague here, Dr. Tom Blanton, someplace, who is a professor of New Testament and early Christianity. And we were in a faculty meeting yesterday, and there were 5 of us. The other 2 are a Jesuit priest and a scholar of Catholic theology. The 5 of us sit as equals, trying to determine how a Catholic university will teach theology and religious studies to its students. And so that's very simple and worth recognizing. And I think it actually goes beyond that, because not only are we welcomed as full members of the department, but the community knows something about us and about our traditions. When I first got to John Carroll, the previous department chair made a point of removing the crucifix from the office I was about to inhabit. Now, okay, on the one hand, that's a nice gesture to a Jewish professor who maybe doesn't want the crucifix in the office, but think about what this means for a Catholic. To literally remove God, or a symbol of God's presence, from a room because this new Jewish scholar thinks about God in different kinds of ways. And that ability to sort of withdraw into oneself, to create space, even at the cost of one's own theological commitments, is really very much what this document is all about. And I would say further, the number of students that I have who grew up in Catholic homes and went to Catholic high schools, who as part of their training in Catholic institutions visited mosques and synagogues and temples and other kinds of non-Catholic Christian worship spaces, and they know something about Jews and Judaism. And I think all of that is a real change from what had come before. And I think that there is something to be said, and something very exciting here. I want to expand it a little bit, not only to Catholics, but to Christians more broadly. When Christians study the earliest texts in the earliest years of what we call Christianity as part of a inner Jewish communal conversation, somehow their own experience of their own tradition is broadened. And I would also say, as a scholar of texts, of non-Christian Jewish texts, from largely around the same time and the same place, when I study those texts, which become part of the Christian canon, my own tradition is illuminated in certain kinds of ways. And I think this is beautiful and worth celebrating, and it's really worth pointing these things out. However, among the things that makes Jews and Judaism different from the other traditions represented here on the panel, and perhaps in the room, is that whereas the variety of different Christianities and the different kinds of Muslims in the world see themselves as part of revealed traditions for which the word religion is obviously and appropriately applied. And yet for Jews, it's a little bit more complicated. And I'll give you an example of this from the text of Nostra Aetate itself. The document begins about talking about the non-Christian religions, and then says, as the Sacred Synod searches into the mystery of the Church, it remembers the bond that spiritually ties the people of the New Covenant, this is a theological, religious terminology, namely Christianity, to Abraham's stock. Now, I don't have the Latin in front of me, okay, we're dealing with an English translation, but I believe that what is going on here is actually a reference to one of St. Paul's epistles, and there the word in Greek is spermatos. And so you can understand exactly what this means, that the Jewish people that are described here are not only encountered because of their so-called religion, but because of their, and here we get into a little bit of a problem with terminology. Do we use the term race, which has a very particular American connotation? Do we use the word ethnicity, which has another way of thinking about it? Perhaps even the word nation, which of course after the 19th century becomes to mean something else. But Jews in many ways are unlike both Christians and Muslims in that their identity as Jews, of course, is connected to things like how they pray and the way they talk about God. But it is also much more ethnic in a way that is not true for Christianity and for Islam, both of which are really transnational movements, okay? And universal in a particular kind of way. Now, historically, we understand why this is. In 1965, the world, and especially a church that's based in Europe, was really coming to terms with the consequences of the Second World War, and certainly the degree to which persecution of the Jews of Europe cannot be totally divorced from the long history of what we might call Christian anti-Judaism. But note, of course, how different the Nazis' understanding of Jews and Judaism was than most previous persecutions of the Jews. Let's take the Spanish Inquisition of 1492, in which newly Catholic Spain demands of its Jewish residents that they have three options. They can either be put to the sword, they can leave, or they can convert. Right? Their Judaism is something that can be undone. And if they convert to Catholicism, well, yeah, maybe in some sense they remain ethnically Jewish, but that's not what the church was interested in. They were no longer religiously Jewish, and that was the point. But Jewish converts to Catholicism in the middle of the 20th century went to Auschwitz along with their believing neighbors. Judaism wasn't something that you could undo about yourself. You were stained by your ethnic background. And it was not something that you could emerge out of and change about yourself. It's much more akin to what we think about when we think about racism in America. And therefore, I think, to some degree, Nostra Aetate makes what I would call a category error. That is, when it talks about Jews and Judaism, what it really wants to do is to eradicate anti-Semitism. And of course, that's a good thing. The document as itself closes by saying that the Catholic Church should reject all kinds of racism. But seemingly, what the Church does is to sort of conflate what I would call anti-Semitism, the hatred of Jews as an ethnicity, with anti-Judaism, which is a rejection of Jewish theology. And here the Church is really stuck. Because as it says explicitly, although the church is the new people of God, the Jews should not be presented as rejected or accursed by God. This is a confusing line. Although the church is the new people of God, Okay, so what does this mean? Certainly a core discourse in the Hebrew Bible itself is the notion of Jewish chosenness. This is a notion not without its problems, and maybe we can talk about that, but certainly the way that the later Jewish tradition understands this is that God has selected a group of people for a particular kind of mission. And in the dominant way that later Christianities read their own scriptures, part of what happens with the birth and the death and the resurrection of Jesus is that there is a new covenant. And especially in the theology of St. Paul, this notion that non-ethnic Judeans, Gentile Christians, in some ways, because of their faith in Jesus, replace the older covenant with ethnic Israel, that is, the Jews. Okay? And so the church is aware that it has this theology of replacement. Well, it's really hard to disentangle that from Christianity, right? After all, if the original covenant at Mount Sinai were still in force, well, then no Christian could ever eat bacon or light a fire on a Saturday, right? Or many of the other deeply core practices of Judaism, right? That original set of law, frequently referred to as the law, is seen as no longer in force, having been replaced by a new covenant and a new way of thinking. And so the church is really caught, okay? Because if the church were to say the original covenant is still in force, is still a valid way to be, then what makes that new covenant really new? And there are some Christian denominations, and maybe there are representatives of those Christianities in the room, who do articulate what we might call a dual covenant theology, in which, let's say, Judaism is for the Jews, and Christianity is for everybody else. But these are both equal opportunity, right? It's like the new express lanes on 480. You can go to the left, and you can go to the right. Pick your lane. Okay? And there are Christianities that think about this. The Catholic Church, of course, is not one of them. And whereas it is attempting to undo anti-Semitism, it has attempted to articulate that by means of trying to downplay its anti-Judaism. And I want to suggest that perhaps you don't have to negate aspects of your own tradition in order to understand and respect the other. And I would encourage people of different religions to think about the ways in which they need not relinquish their core truth claims about the other in order to love them. Okay, we have a variety of different core truth claims. Certainly, as the document mentions, within the Holy Quran and the Hadith, the person of Jesus in the Islamic tradition is an incredibly important prophet, but not God. Right? That is a major, major difference that I suggest does not need to be overcome in order to love the other. And I think the same is true between Jews and Christians, and I can talk more and at length sometime about Jews and Muslims, especially in a passion of mine, which is trying to do peacemaking in Israel and in Palestine. But what I'd love to suggest is that we take to heart actually one very famous Jewish response to Nostra Aetate, penned by Rabbi Soloveitchik, who is really the leader of modern Orthodox Judaism in America, who insisted that religious traditions see each other as autonomous. And instead of attempting to create a theology of the other within your own tradition, to actually recognize that there may be ways that our own theologies are unable to encapsulate the other. And we might be able to say with love, I think you're wrong, but I love you anyway. And so I would encourage us not necessarily to make the mistake of conflating these two things, and not necessarily assume that in order to reach across, to do dialogue, that you have to abandon something about yourself. And just one linguistic note, when we say dialogue, this is a Greek word It really is talking about two speakings. And I wonder if we might think of it as dia akue, right? Two listenings. And more to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bickart. And we appreciate for this detailed information on Nostra Aetate within the historical context. I really find that quite valuable. Thank you so much. And it was quite welcomed to hear that having equally deciding on the religious education on John Caleb University, we really appreciate for that, and then it's good to hear that our scholars are working together on common goal. Without further ado, I would like to invite Reverend Dr. Tom MacMillan for his input. Thank you.
If you have seen the movie Conclave, a very timely movie that begins the real conclave on May 7th, after the passing of Pope Francis. Thank you for acknowledging that early on. But in the movie, you may recall Cardinal Lawrence makes a statement about the seeking and the searching for the new Pope. And he says, to those who have gathered to discern the next Pope, there is one sin which I have come to fear above all others: certainty. Certainty is a great enemy of unity. Certainty is the deadly enemy of tolerance. Our faith is a living thing precisely because it walks hand in hand with doubt. If there was only certainty and no doubt, there would be no mystery and therefore no need for faith. Nostra Aetate, in our time, 60th anniversary, October 28, 1965, calls us not to certainty or being right or manipulating others to our side or trying to encapsulate another faith into ours. It's rather to be open-hearted and a commitment to discover truth together. It esteems the value of truth in other religions and encourages us toward dialogue and collaboration, faith-seeking understanding. It calls for a shared humanity where all people are able to acknowledge that we are children of God together. It challenges us to ask important questions like, how can I change? What can I learn? What am I missing? What is the meaning, the aim of our life? What is moral good? What is sin? Whence suffering, and what purpose does it serve? Which is the road to true happiness? What are death, judgment, and retribution after death? What finally is the ultimate, inexpressible mystery which encompasses our existence? Whence do we come, and where are we going? Can anyone answer any of those with certainty? Have any of you tried to answer a friend or a spouse with certainty? And how has that gone? Who has chosen to be right rather than in relationship? I have a friend who loves to explain, keeps explaining. He was referring to an argument that he had with his wife. And he said, and I kept trying to explain to her my point of view. And I said, how did that go? He said, not well. Should I not explain? No, you should not keep explaining. Two listenings might be a good path together. We need each other for these questions. Our views will differ, but maybe they will provide a ray of truth that enlightens. And maybe in sharing, we will find ourselves more committed to justice, moral welfare, as well as peace and freedom. Maybe we share our gifts of time, insight, understanding, but we're also honest enough to share our unedited lives, our rough edges. Can we be that honest to acknowledge our own anxieties, our own loneliness, our own depression, our own frustration, angst, anger? Can we name those in addition to the high moral truths that we all strive to arrive at or understand more deeply? None of our understandings of ourselves or the sources of our morality are complete. None of our understanding of the holy are refined enough to account for the mystery that is God and the power that is experienced in a gathering like this, where people of different backgrounds and perspectives are around a table, enjoying, sharing. And by the way, those are the best wings I've ever had. That is what we experience, this mystery that you can't describe or contain. It somehow captures and captivates us instead of the other way around. It's too bad that it took a document to assert what should be a basic understanding. But sometimes we drift so far without even noticing the fear, the suspicion, and even the hatred that simmers beneath the surface, within and without. Often that suspicion and hatred is fueled by lies and ignorance. It's fueled by a refusal to learn truth, meet the stranger, inquire about beliefs, hear the stories. Fear sells. It gets attention and votes. We're not selling fear here. We're building bridges. We're dismantling prejudice. We're facing bias, challenging hate speech, and being curious instead of judgmental, faithful instead of arrogant. We might well claim that such convictions, and we may write about our own opinions, but the trouble occurs when we have a tendency to become our opinions. And instead of merely having them, we embody them. And then if someone doesn't like my political view, I am the enemy. It's that kind of transformation of a political view into a human enemy that's very dangerous and destructive and dismantles the hard, noble work of peacemaking. So instead, we want to grow and learn for religion to be authentic to who you are. You have to know who you are. It's been said that if you don't know who you are, the world will tell you. But it doesn't just end with knowing who you are, does it? It also includes knowing your neighbor. Each of us has a story. We have been shaped by our environment, guided by our community, and inspired by our faith, and so has our neighbor. So before we judge or categorize, we will do well to learn from each other's story. We will hear doubt and struggle. We will hear maybe what it's like to grow up in Turkey and move to Afghanistan, teach in Africa, and come here and teach here, and have kids that can't quite pay attention, but are so easily distracted. You're trying to bring to them truth and message in your experience, but they can't quit looking at their phones. You're trying to build something that will last. So we're working in our context struggling together, hearing the stories, learning about different points of agreement and disagreement. And in the telling and in the sharing, something opens. The heart, the mind, the life, the home, community, the nation. We want to read and learn and share. And then we wonder what's next. What is awaiting us in our time? What follows this gathering? Is there a common ground, a shared concern in relation to poverty, or hunger, or housing, or violence? Maybe we meet in groups and read Dr. Zeki's book. Maybe we just show up one day at Rabbi Noah's class. Don't do that. Maybe you meet and support an international student from a different faith background. Instead of sending them away, what would happen if we bring them to our home? And we welcome them and we learn from their own stories. Is that 5 minutes? Good. And maybe we decide to meet at homes. Maybe there's somebody here that you have been drawn to. And so you exchange numbers and you text and you find a time, or you tell them, I want you to come to my house. And I want to cook for you or have tea. Or maybe you don't trust the cleanliness of your house, and so you meet at a coffee place or have tea together. It's simple. It's a connection. It's a relationship. And you don't have to come with the answers. You just have to come with two listening hearts. Was that Shema?
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to learn. Hearts open to receive. In our tradition, Jesus, as he had risen from the grave, appeared on the shore. The disciples didn't quite know what to do, and so they went back to their craft, back to their shape, their way of making a living. It was fishing. So they were out fishing all night. Jesus showed up on the shore and made them breakfast. They came to the shore, a simple breakfast, a simple meal shared together, just wanting one more time to be with him over a meal. But he knew that Peter was carrying something in him of shame. He had betrayed Jesus 3 times. 3 times that I don't know him. I'm not one of his followers. 3 times he rejected that. And Jesus realized, I need this time with Peter. So 3 questions. Peter, do you love me? 3 times Peter said, yes, I love you. Well, then feed my sheep. It's interesting. He wouldn't leave Peter in shame. He wouldn't leave Peter alone with that sense of, I haven't measured up. I've denied one of my friends, my Savior. 3 times Jesus asked him. 3 times he said yes. Now he was ready. Now go feed my sheep. Go tend to my people. Go heal the broken. Go be about what I've been about. And then watch what happens when you go forth and have simple meals, interesting conversations, learn the stories of another. And maybe you're drawn more than to the mystery and wonder of how God has fashioned and formed us. And maybe you're less certain, but more faithful.
Thank you so much. I definitely will remember the sin of certainty. And I definitely will also remember, or I would like to highlight, Nostra is about having an open heart. And I love that we are not selling fear, but we are building bridges. Thank you so much. And lastly, I would like to invite Dr. Zeki Saritoprak for a speech. Please join me.
Good evening. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you. These people before me, they went like so beautiful things. I don't know how should I follow them. How should I do? But I like to start with Tom's your invitation to my class. So you are welcome to come to my class, John Carroll. It will not accommodate all of you, but you can arrange a place that will accommodate all of you. And he said, read my book. I don't know which book. Any of them. Okay, any of them. Thank you very much. But actually, the point that he's mentioned, certainty, it reminds me of a prayer of the Prophet of Islam, Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Yes, you will do your best to find the truth. Because that is the goal of human being, to find the truth. But you have to, he has these, the Prophet himself. Imagine, the Prophet, he is the Prophet of God. But he has this prayer, and he would use this prayer daily. Oh Allah, Allah and God, as you know, are the same. The God with capital G, and Allah is the same. Just can be used interchangeably. Oh God, oh Allah, show me the truth as truth and help me to follow it. Show me the false as false and help me to avoid it. This was his prayer daily. The Prophet would have this prayer. So, yes, you think that you are actually on the right direction, on the right path. How about if you are wrong? So you ask divine help for finding the truth. Okay, after this brief connection to the previous talk, I'd like to elaborate on something that was mentioned in Nostra Aetate. We as Muslims are to a certain extent lucky because we have two major traditions before Islam, and therefore Islam knows about Judaism, Islam knows about Christianity, and therefore builds on it actually. So the Quran speaks of Moses. Moses, I think, the most repeatedly mentioned prophet in the Quran. Probably the most repeatedly mentioned name of a human being in the Quran, Moses. Maybe Jesus more than 90 times mentioned in the Quran. These are the prophets that Muslims have to believe in them. The Torah, I was talking to my colleague Noah, there is a verse in the Quran, it says, there is light and guidance for humanity in the Torah. The Torah is a divine revelation. So, Catholic tradition was not looking to Muslims and probably Jews for a long period of time with, maybe in a silent way, I don't know, but Nostra Aetate made a big change. And that was very positive change. Despite the fact that there were some kind of wording, maybe you can debate, well, I think academically it definitely is debated, but the positive dimension, at least I know at John Carroll we have a chair called TUI Chair in Interreligious Studies, and this was established after the Second Vatican Council, after Nostra Aetate. TUI family donated, and this chair was established in 1965. Well, that means Nostra Aetate was good, because we have a chair now based on this at John Carroll University. And the title of the chair is Interreligious Studies, to study other religious traditions, to learn from other religious traditions. That's why Catholic University is having a professor of Islamic studies, having a professor of Jewish studies. So that's very positive dimension. The statement that was mentioned in the Nostra Aetate, I will share with you, and you decide whether this was really good one or it is a little bit ambiguous. I find it very helpful. I don't know. The church regards with esteem also the Muslims. They adore the one God, living and subsisting in himself, merciful and all-powerful, the creator of heaven and earth, who has spoken to men. They also honor Mary, his virgin mother, at the times when even call on her with the devotion. In addition, they await the day of judgment and the reward of God following the resurrection of the dead. For this reason, they highly esteem an upright life and worship God, especially through prayer, almsgiving, and fasting. This is from the Nostra Aetate about Muslims. It is speaking of the divine attributes. This was not known probably by the Catholic Church. So after this, now Catholic Church is aware of the attributes of God in the Islamic tradition to a certain extent. Mary, I don't know if it was known or not, but this document clearly says that Mary is esteemed by Muslims. Well, there is a chapter in the Quran named after Mary, chapter 19. The whole chapter is named after Mary. The whole chapter of the Quran, the story of the birth of Jesus. There are some miracles of Jesus, like this is in the Quran. Jesus speaks from his cradle to declare the innocence of his mother. It's in the Quran. I asked my colleague, Catholic colleague, he said it is not in the canonical Gospels, but it is, I think, in the Gospel of Thomas. There is like a similar story in the Gospel of Thomas. So there are many references to this concept, and this document briefly speaks of that. Now, when we look from this perspective, this was a good step. Maybe if we look at the Quran, the invitation of the Quran, I would say, was 1400 years before Nostra Aetate. The Quran clearly says Christians and Jews, the people of the book. The people of the book, one of my colleagues who was professor of Islamic studies at Temple University, he is originally from Lebanon, so he knows Arabic per se, like the details or the depth of Arabic words. He said the term Ahl, which is the term that's used for the people of the book, Ahlul Kitab, is very, very beautiful term that Prophet Muhammad used for his family. My family, he says, Ahli. The same term is used for the people of the book. Like the family, our family. In this term, there is connotation of family, and actually now people have started to use the term family of Abraham. The family of Abraham, Jews, Muslims, and Christians, one family. So this concept of Ahl has connotation of family. And the Quranic verse addresses the Prophet of Islam and has this invitation. I will share this verse from the Quran with you. Say, O Muhammad, O people of the book, Jews and Christians, let's come to an agreement between you and us. Commentators are saying, let's come to a common ground. We have a common ground. Let's come to a common ground. Maybe we'll have differences. Yes, there will be differences. There might be some actually very foundational differences, but still we can come together. Not necessarily to totally ignore our differences. I have 5 minutes. I thought just talk for like 5 minutes. So there is a beautiful verse in the Quran. It says, you will have differences, they have differences, human beings will have differences. God will make the judgment on the day of judgment. Don't make like a too big deal of it. God will make the judgment. Trust in God's judgment and come together. This Quranic verse is a clear invitation. It says, let's come to an agreement between you and us. Then what is the largest umbrella that will bring us together? Worship only one God. We are worshiping one God. Jews and Muslims are very clear about this. We are very importantly saying one God. Christianity has this concept of Trinity, but that is also, when you categorize Christianity, it is a monotheist religion. Monotheist religion. It's a matter of interpretation. It's a matter of interpretation. If you go deeply into Sufi tradition, there is something, I will not be able to get into the details of this. I'm afraid to go too deep. But there is something called united with God, to be united with God. This concept of unity with God is a very powerful theme in the Sufi tradition, in the mystical tradition of Islam. So let's come together to a common ground that we worship only one God. And I think this is such an important message. If we come to common ground and work together for the betterment of our society, I think we are accepting this message of the Quran. We are following this message of the Quran. Reverend Tom said, read my book, my book. I recommend Islam's Jesus book. In that book, I have an argument, and the argument is that if Muslims, Christians, and Jews come together, and they have to come together, my argument is that they have to come together because they have so much common ground. When I listen to like a Christian priest, is he a Muslim? Sometimes I say, is he a Muslim? Like a Jewish rabbi, sometimes they speak, I listen. Is this a Muslim? Because it's so much similar to what Islam says. If you listen to a Muslim, probably you will have a similar idea. So there is so much points of agreement, points of unity among Muslims, Christians, and Jews. And I say in that book, if they come together, they contribute, they constitute more than half of humanity. Muslims, Christians, and Jews, they constitute about 58% of all population. They can make a big change. And they have to come together for world peace. And when I say world peace, it doesn't mean that excuse me, I exclude Hindus and Buddhists. They are also will be benefiting from world peace. And they have to come together. And I think this gathering is a good step towards those future cooperation, alliance, and gathering. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zeki. I will remember the prayer done by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Show me the truth as truth and make me follow it. I think that's quite important. And it was quite interesting to hear that Moses is the person who was mostly mentioned in the Quran as prophet, and Jesus more than 90 times. And then lastly that I would like to say, when you talk about how much closer or how much that people, when you talk about Christianity and when you explain in your book, once that a few years ago I was in somewhere else, and then I was giving a presentation in one of the church, and then right by the end of my presentation, people were asking questions and answers. Questions, by the way, please feel free to write your questions and someone will be collecting just now. Someone from the audience just stood up and said, "Hey, young guy, do you really believe in this way?" I said, "Yeah, because all these are, mainly the verses from Quran." He says, "Oh, everybody, I'm just telling you, this guy is better Christian than myself." So, you only realize that when you go inside the original text, and then when you go in deep with the good intention, you realize that we all come together on our common humanity. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I would like to appreciate our speakers. And then it's time right now that please raise your heart if you have a question on your table or a comment. Someone will come and collect it from you. And then we will gather that right here. And then we will rather read your question or your comment and then ask to the panel. But since it's /panel, I also would like to open up the floor. Or maybe, again, I will have 5 minutes card with me. Do you think that we should open up for a 5-minute discussion on your speeches right here by yourselves with the microphone right here? And then you will have some comments on each other's speech as well as even beyond that. Yeah, we're almost 8:30, you're right. I was just trying to buy time. Do we have any questions? Can we have that? Not only that, by the way, but I was just hoping that throughout the table discussion, we most probably will answer some of the questions. But yeah, it's good to, okay, we can, I can have those. So I can start reading to panel. Officially, we have 1 minute. But unofficially, since we have started, I think 6 minutes or 7 minutes late to dinner, I'm just trying to buy time from there. Okay, there's one question which simply says, how do we deal with extremism in each tradition?
Yeah, this is a really, really good question, and obviously the short one is I don't know. I think that among the things that we have to realize is that modernity changes the way we think about religion and how religious traditions think about themselves. In a sense, all of us are responding to the massive changes that occurred, let's say, in the long 19th century. And among the ways many religious traditions respond to modernity is by attempting to reject it, right? And maybe another way of thinking about religious extremism is that of a sort of rejection of the kinds of tolerances and encounters with others that are at the very heart of modernity. I think this is where we need scholars of ancient religious texts, because when you study the Holy Quran, when you study the variety of books of the New Testament, when you study ancient rabbinic documents, one of the things that you cannot help but notice is their multivocality. There are multiple voices that speak within them. And that one of the things that religious extremists assert is that there's only one way to think about things, there's only one right way to think about things. And I think when you use historical scholarship to study these texts, you actually realize that everything is much more complicated. And then when you actually are able to listen to multiple voices, and I'm talking about within a single tradition, you find that things are much more complicated, and that's really what we need is to complicate everything.
I have found that the more certain people are, the more insecure they actually are. And the certainty is a mask that refuses to come down until someone cares enough to say, tell me your story. And many times you will hear a gap, you will hear a pain that has forced them to become militant, extremists. The hard part is to stay in the conversation, because it is so easy to retreat and to judge and to alienate. And to actually remain there, even when you vehemently disagree, and you know that it's damaging, takes a lot of courage. And then to stay in the relationship, the hard part is that they move to an echo chamber, where their extremism is reinforced. And to untangle them from that web is a real task. And the more that we, in these kind of gatherings, invite conversation, it plays a part in dismantling extremism.
Yes, I think the best way is not to isolate extremist groups, but to get in touch with them, to explain to them. I remember once I was giving a talk at the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota, and I was talking about dialogue between Muslims, Christians, and Jews, and one of the students was Muslim, raised his hand, and he said, well, there is a verse in the Quran, it says, don't take Jews and Christians friends. Is there a verse like that? Yes, there is a verse. So I said, please read my book, my article. I wrote an article called An Islamic Social Policy Towards the People of the World. A long article. I think I wrote it in 2002. I explained a little bit, but I said maybe my explanation is not sufficient. Read the details of this in my article. What is the meaning of that verse? What is the beginning of that verse and the end of that verse? And then he read, probably, and he sent me a message. He said, I changed my mind. So I think if we communicate and we give them the right direction, because the essence of the Quran is middle path, middle road. No extremism in both sides. Like a person comes to the Prophet and says, I will fast throughout the year. The Prophet said, this is too much. Don't do that. And he said, I am powerful, I can do that. The Prophet said, if you really like to do that, at least I am a prophet of God, I don't do that. I am, the messenger of God, I don't do that. But if you really like to do more, be like David. David would have one every other day fasting. That's what the Islamic tradition said, David would fast every other day. So at least, even in the religious practices, extremism is not accepted in Islam. The positive side of extremism. The negative one is to reject everything, and that's also another extremism. Or to misinterpret the verses of the Quran. And one of the reasons for this is literalism. Unfortunately, many people who are interpreting the Quran, they don't know Arabic. They look at translation of the Quran and they interpret it according to their own narrow understanding. That's not Quran, basically. So I think the best way is to communicate and then to go to the essence of religion, to the essence, to the core of religion. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all our speakers here. And then to our audience as well. I didn't expect this much question, by the way. So I really appreciate for all of this. I wish that we had a time to go all of them one by one, but I will just quickly since Father Thomas, Reverend Thomas, just letting you know it's time for the next event right after us. I just would like to read some of those. One is asking when is the next program. So please keep following NOICA's social media, and then Facebook page, YouTube page, Instagram page, and then website too. And then some says here, no question, keep what you are doing, please increase these kinds of gatherings in different places also as well. Thank you. There are also simple questions, but let me just read one other one right here, which says that how can laymen like us foster these ideals? I think that, do you think that next time we should maybe speak 5 minutes and then go over to questions and then that's the only way we can address all these things. But please forgive me for not being able to go through all these questions. Please forgive me. I definitely will keep these, and then we'll make sure that we definitely address all these things in different programs under our umbrella. But before we close tonight, I would like to again express our whole appreciation to our panelists for making time and being here and adding value to our program with their contribution. And I also would like to appreciate every one of you to be here and then sharing your time, your space with us, and then being part of this program. We really appreciate. Without you, we wouldn't do this. Thank you. And thanks to our speakers. We will have something very small token of appreciation for our speakers, but before we go to that, I also want to offer our heartfelt thank you to John Knox Presbyterian Church for their generous hospitality. If she's around here, I would like to also call Connie here to also receive the token of appreciation and our speakers on behalf of everybody else. And lastly, deep thanks to the dedicated volunteers from Northern Ohio Intercultural Association. You're quiet and behind the scenes support made this thing possible. And then afterwards we will go for the group photo. Is it good? As a last word, I would like to quote from someone that I really get inspired by. He says, dialogue is not a strategy, it's a way of being human in the presence of others. Love and compassion are the foundations of a peaceful society. Without them, no religious or philosophical argument can sustain harmony. Ladies and gentlemen, may tonight's gathering inspire us all to carry these values forward in our homes, our faith communities, and the world. Thank you again, and travel safe home.